This is part two of a story. Three, two, one.
I said. My voice was hollow, devoid of anger or sadness. I was just empty. I turned my back on them and started walking down the dusty path. Where are you going? She called out, her voice pitching into a panic. Connor, come back to the house. You're bleeding. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I just kept walking until their voices faded, swallowed by the buzzing of the cicadas in the summer heat. I found Samuel waiting by the train tracks on the edge of town, right where he used to hide the recyclables. When he saw me, soaking wet, bruised, and bleeding, he dropped his half-smoked cigarette. Jesus, man, did she finally snap? He asked, stepping back. I'm leaving, I said. Are you coming or not? Samuel looked at the town behind us, a place that had never given an orphan boy the time of day, and then looked at the slow-moving freight train rumbling toward the crossing. He grinned, a crooked, missing tooth smile. Ladies first. We jumped a boxcar, just as the sun began to dip below the horizon. As the train picked up speed, the town where I had been born, hated, and nearly killed faded into a blur of meaningless shapes. I sat in the corner of the rattling metal box, shivering in my wet clothes, and felt a strange sensation expanding in my chest. It was freedom. I was no longer a mistake. I was just a stray dog, and stray dogs didn't need to answer to anyone for their existence. The next 5 years were a blur of rust, grease, and survival. Samuel and I ended up in a sprawling, soot-stained industrial city 2 states over. We lied about our ages and worked cash-in-hand jobs. We washed dishes in diners where the grease coated the walls, unloaded produce trucks at 3 a.m. in the freezing rain, and slept in abandoned cars at a local scrapyard. Eventually, the owner of the scrapyard, an old Korean War vet named Mac, caught us sleeping in a rusted-out Ford. Instead of calling the cops, he tossed us a pair of heavy leather gloves. If you're gonna sleep on my property, you're gonna earn it, Mac grunted. Mac didn't care about my blood. He didn't care who my father was. He only cared if I could lift an engine block, and if I showed up on time. For the first time in my life, my hands were used to build things up rather than tear things down. I grew tall, my shoulders broadening from the heavy labor. But there was a problem. As I grew older, my face changed. Every time I looked in a cracked mirror in the scrapyard bathroom, I saw him. I didn't know exactly what my biological father looked like, but I knew I looked like him. I had the same harsh jawline, the same heavy brow that used to make Mom flinch when I merely looked at her. I hated my reflection. It felt like I was wearing a dead man's skin. I fixed that when I was 17. Samuel had gotten into debt with some local bookies. When they came to the scrapyard to collect, I stepped in front of him. There were 3 of them, grown men with tire irons. I fought like a rabid dog, channeling every ounce of repressed rage, every bruise Mom had ever given me, every second of suffocating under that pillow. I won, but I paid the price. One of them caught me flush across the face with a wrench. It shattered my nose and split my cheek open to the bone. When the swelling finally went down weeks later, I looked in the mirror. My nose had healed crooked. A thick, jagged scar ran down my cheek, distorting the harsh jawline. The symmetry of my face was ruined. Samuel felt terrible, apologizing endlessly, but I just stared at the mirror and smiled. I didn't look like the rapist anymore. I looked like me. I looked like something that had been broken and put back together by my own hands. By the time I turned 19, Mac had passed away and left the scrapyard to Samuel and me. We were doing well. We had a small apartment above the office, steady income, and nobody bothered us. I thought the past was completely dead until a rainy Tuesday afternoon in November. I was underneath a rusted Chevy, grease dripping onto my face when Samuel kicked my boot. Hey, you got a visitor. I slid out from under the car, wiping my hands on a dirty rag. Standing in the doorway of the garage, dripping wet from the rain, was a teenager. He was tall, lanky, wearing an expensive jacket, and looking around the dirty garage with wide, nervous eyes. It took me a few seconds to recognize him. Casper, I said. He flinched at the sound of my voice. He looked at me, taking in my height, the grease smeared on my arms, and the jagged scar cutting across my face. He swallowed hard. You're hard to find, Connor, he said, his voice cracking slightly. What do you want? I asked, not moving closer. Casper reached into his backpack and pulled out a battered metal tin. I recognized it instantly. It was the first aid kit Granny used to keep on a kitchen table. Granny died, Casper said quietly. Last week. Heart gave out. I felt a slight tightening in my chest, but I pushed it down. Sorry to hear that. She made Mom promise to find you. Casper continued, stepping forward and placing the tin box on a stack of tires. But Mom couldn't do it. She couldn't bring herself to hire a private investigator. So I did it. Used my savings. I stared at the tin box. Why? Casper looked at his shoes. Things haven't been good, Connor. After you left, Mom changed. She got super quiet. She stopped fighting, but she stopped smiling too. It's like the house died the day you walked out. She still sets a plate for you at Thanksgiving. Then she throws the food away when dinner's over. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. She's just relieved I'm gone. No. Casper looked up, his eyes suddenly fierce. She's guilty. She told me everything, Connor. A few years ago, she got drunk and told me why she treated you the way she did. And she told me about the reservoir. How you saved me. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. I used to think you were a bully. I thought you were just mean. But you took all her hits, and then you gave me my life. I owed it to you to bring you this. He tapped the tin box. I'm heading back. I got college applications to finish. But Janet says hi. She still has that lucky charm you tucked in her blanket. She wears it on her necklace. Casper turned to leave, pausing at the door. He looked back at me, his gaze lingering on my scarred face. You don't look like a monster, Connor. You just look like my brother. He walked out into the rain. I stood in the silent garage for a long time. Eventually, I walked over to the tires and opened the tin box. Inside, resting on top, was the old enamel cup Granny had used to give me the poisoned mushroom soup. Seeing it sent a phantom cramp through my stomach. Beneath it was a thick stack of cash, thousands of dollars in worn, crumpled bills. And beneath that, a handwritten letter on yellowed paper. I picked it up. The handwriting was shaky, but the ink was pressed deep into the paper. Connor, if you're reading this, I'm dead, and it's about damn time. I've carried too much sin for one lifetime. I tried to kill you because I thought I was saving my daughter from the ghost of the man who broke her. But I was just a coward. When you woke up in that hospital and told the doctor you took the poison yourself, you shamed me. You were a child, born of violence. Yet you had more mercy in your heart than I had my entire 70 years. I saved this money for you. It's every penny I had. Take it. Build a life. Don't forgive us. We don't deserve it. Just live. And know that the blood in your veins is your own. You washed it clean. Granny. I stared at the letter until the words blurred. I didn't cry. I had forgotten how to cry a long time ago. But something heavy, something that had been sitting on my chest since I was 7 years old, finally cracked. 2 days later, I borrowed Mac's old pickup truck and drove back to my hometown. I didn't plan on staying. I just needed to sever the last invisible string tying me to this place. The town looked smaller than I remembered. The roads were narrower. The houses looked more worn down. I pulled up to the curb outside the house I grew up in. The paint was peeling on the porch, and the front lawn was overgrown. I stepped out of the truck and leaned against the door. The front door opened. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, walked out carrying a watering can. She had dark hair and bright eyes. Around her neck, glinting in the pale afternoon sun, was a cheap, tarnished Lucky Charm on a string. Janet. She looked at me, pausing on the steps. She didn't look scared, just curious. Before she could say anything, the screen door creaked open again. Mom stepped out onto the porch. She was holding a dish towel. Tom had not been kind to her. Her hair was streaked with gray. Her shoulders slouched beneath the weight of an invisible burden. She looked up and saw me standing by the truck. The dish towel slipped from her hands, landing on the dusty wooden floorboards. She took a trembling step forward. She recognized my eyes, even if the rest of my face was scarred and battered. Janet. Mom whispered, her voice shaking. Go inside. Janet looked between us, then quietly went back into the house, closing the door behind her. Mom and I stood looking at each other across the 20 yards of overgrown grass. It felt like a battlefield where the war had ended years ago, leaving nothing but scorched earth. Slowly, I walked up the driveway. I didn't go up the porch steps. I stayed on the grass, looking up at her. You came back, she breathed, her hands clutching the porch railing so hard her knuckles turned white. Just passing through, I said. My voice was deep, unrecognizable from the voice she used to hit. She stared at the scar on my face, her eyes welling with tears. What happened to you? Life, I said simply. It's better this way. I don't look like him anymore. She let out a choked sob, bringing a hand to her mouth. She sank onto the porch swinging, her legs giving out. I'm so sorry, Connor. I'm so sorry. I look at you, and I don't see him anymore. I just see the boy I broke. I broke you, and you still saved my son. I didn't save him for you, I said evenly. I saved him because it was the right thing to do. And because I decided I wasn't going to let anyone die just because their existence was inconvenient. Not even me. She squeezed her eyes shut, tears spilling down her weathered cheeks. I was terrified of you, but I should have been terrified of myself. Yeah, you should have, I agreed. There was no malice in my tone. It was just a fact. I reached into my leather jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. It contained the thousands of dollars Granny had left me, plus a few thousand more I had saved from scrapyard. I placed it on the porch railing. What is this? She asked, looking up. Granny's money, and to some of mine. Put in a college fund for Casper and Janet. Mom stared at the envelope as if it were a bomb. I can't take this. It's yours. I don't need it. I make my own money now. I took a step back, the dry grass crunching under my boots. I wanted you to see me, Mom. I wanted you to see that I didn't die. I didn't turn into a monster. I grew up. I survived you. I survived Granny. I survived my own blood. Mom stood up, reaching a hand out toward me, her face twisted in desperate agony. Connor, please. Stay. Let me try. Let me be a mother to you. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. For a moment, the little boy inside me, the boy who had bought her a birthday cake with recycling money, the boy who just wanted a hug, ached. He wanted to run up those steps and bury his face in her shoulder. But I wasn't that boy anymore. That boy had died on the bathroom floor after drinking mushroom soup. The man standing here had rebuilt himself from the scraps left behind. No, I said softly. Some things you can't fix. And that's okay. You're free now, Mom. You don't have to look at me and remember the worst night of your life. And I don't have to look at you and remember mine. I turned around and walked back to the truck. Connor, she cried out, her voice breaking into a raw, ragged wail. Connor, please. I opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. I didn't look back. I put the truck in drive and pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, I saw her collapse on her knees on the porch, sobbing into her hands. But behind the front window of the house, I saw Janet looking out, her hand resting on the Lucky Charm around her neck. I gave her a small, brief nod. I drove out of town, the old V8 engine roaring beneath the hood. The sky ahead was clearing, the heavy gray rain clouds giving way to a pale, sharp blue. I rolled the window down, letting the cold autumn air hit my scarred face. I took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, my lungs didn't burn. My blood didn't feel toxic. I was Connor, just Connor. And for the first time, I was excited for tomorrow. From as far back as I can remember, I knew my mom hated me. She gives me sleeping pills when I'm 3. When I'm 5, she
W story. Hey, tell me in the comments if you guys want me to keep doing more of these stories. Yeah, peace out. That's what AI is for, bro.